Another crazy Saturday night in the Big 12. Mark Rogers TV providing some instant analysis from Lubbock with Oklahoma State surviving Texas Tech 41-34. And to help us with the analysis, our favorite guy from the Big 12, Chris Ross from the Land Grant Gauntlet. Just join him at thelgg.com for the best in Big 12 football coverage. All right, Chris. 41-34. I don't know why such the low-scoring game tonight in the Big 12, but there you have it. It went down to the wire, and it was a fun one.
Yeah, the typical low-scoring Big 12 game. Yeah, things got weird in Lubbock. You know, the night game in Lubbock, they're always weird. Oklahoma State got out to an early lead. Texas Tech made a couple mistakes. You thought the Cowboys might put it away, but the Texas Tech defense, give them credit. They stood up. They held Oklahoma State to field goals when they needed to, or at least attempting to kick a field goal for the Cowboys. And they made a game of it. Just couldn't close out Mason Rudolph and company out of the end zone there on the final drive. But it was a fantastic effort by the Red Raiders.
Hey, Chris, had this been the typical Texas Tech non-conference schedule, aside from the recent dates against Arkansas, I would say that we didn't know that much about Texas Tech. Now, Arizona State and Houston are not great football teams, but they're capable teams. And Texas Tech came into this game undefeated, having won those two games. And they showed us a graphic late in the game. 4-1 were the Red Raiders against top 10 teams in Lubbock. So when you say crazy, weird night in Lubbock, we've seen this before. My narrative on Oklahoma State is that everybody seems to dismiss the team, any team across the country, unless they've got that national brand of a certain ilk, that they lost. We're going to forget about them. TCU is now the chic pick in the Big 12. But let's hold on here just a bit. TCU's flawed. We're going to see them possibly stumble down the road. And Oklahoma State, I think, showing that, hey, we can still be a factor in the Big 12.
Yeah, yes, no doubt. TCU absolutely won that game, but I still feel like the Cowboys and Oklahoma State are the better team. They have to limit the mistakes, though, if they're going to achieve their preseason goals of winning the conference and maybe more. Every single game so far, they've made silly mistakes that they cost them the game against TCU. And they could cost them down the road. They nearly cost them tonight, missing a 19-yard field goal, missing I believe it was a 23-yard field goal. Those kind of things can't happen against OU or K-State or someone, a better team than the Red Raiders. Now for Texas Tech's part, they're much better than I actually gave them credit for going into this season. I thought losing Patrick Mahomes would be a step back for them as they look to rebuild. Everybody talked about Cliff Kingsbury's seat being hot, and I have really been impressed with what I've seen out of Lubbock so far this season. The big win over Arizona State, Houston, and no, those teams aren't world beaters, but those are games that I talked with you. I thought they would lose those two games or one of those two games at the very least. So coming into this game undefeated, I really think that Texas Tech is a solid squad. Nick Shimonik is playing very, very well. They might surprise a ranked team here in the Big 12 in the future schedule. These are games that they can win.
Back to Oklahoma State, Justice Hill with a big night, took on a lot of carries, 30 carries for $164, also had his first receiving touchdown of his career, and just the quality and the depth of weapons on the offense at Oklahoma State. I don't want to say it's unmatched in college football, but it's right there with anybody else. Certainly with James Washington leading the way with another huge night, Marcel Aitman, Jalen McCleskey and company, Mason Rudolph at the control. So when we look at Oklahoma State, let's see the schedule upcoming. We've got a date with Baylor coming up, which has become the bottom of the Big 12. And then it gets extremely difficult with Texas, West Virginia, and Oklahoma in a row. Based on what you've seen out of the Cowboys, what has surprised you? What has disappointed you? What concerns you? What do you project going forward?
It's a tough call. At this time, I would have said Oklahoma State would be undefeated heading into Bedlam, and that would be the game that everybody saw deciding the Big 12 and then heading to the Big 12 championship game. Now, we have not seen solid, complete football other than the Pitt game where they went 7 for 7. But even in that game, they made silly mistakes. We have not seen a game where they can limit those. Some of the play calling was somewhat suspect. Oklahoma State absolutely needed to score on that final drive, because if they turn the ball over to Texas Tech, who knows what could have happened. They could have lost their second game in a row. That was a very real possible outcome for Oklahoma State. We can't just dismiss that as they got the win in Lubbock, a weird Lubbock. They're not playing to the level that we know they're capable of, and that's a concern moving forward. I think that they got a little complacent. They bought into their own hype. They've become a little too confident. And I think we see that in some sloppy play, and they kind of shrug it off like, oh, well, but then if it snowballs like it did against TCU, then they're in real trouble. You said Justice Hill, an incredible fun running back to watch. I mean, this kid is lightning in a bottle, 30 carries, 164 yards. His long was 24. He just finds a seam, finds a little crease, and he can hit it. He's got a burst of speed, and he brings another weapon to, like you said, a very powerful attack. But I feel like they struggle to utilize the attack, especially when the field gets kind of compressed. They struggle to get into the end zone and have to settle for a field goal. And I don't think Gundy can trust his kicker at all. He's missed several short field goals. That's got to be concerning. Also concerning, mismanagement of the play clock there. Gundy calling 2 timeouts in a close game early in the second half, and he might have needed to hold those on. For the clutch time. Had Texas Tech scored, or had it been a little bit different situation, that could have come back and bit Oklahoma State.
Chris Ross joining us on our instant analysis series, talking Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, following another exciting game in the Big 12 with the Cowboys winning 41-34. Pretty light slate, not a lot of action aside from this stellar game in Lubbock for Week 5 in the Big 12. But when we look ahead to Week 6, Chris, we'll have you send us off with a little bit of a preview, as we've got Texas Tech, again, much improved. Now they got what we would consider a win at Kansas before they've got to take on West Virginia on the road. But for Week 6, October 7th, you've got Iowa State, a good, decent team, but they shouldn't provide too much resistance, you would think, at Oklahoma. Texas Tech, the aforementioned game against Kansas, West Virginia, TCU, a game a lot of people are looking forward to in a big way, and Kansas State bouncing back against Baylor this week, taking on Texas on the road in Austin.
Yeah, it should be a really great week. Oklahoma is looking very, very solid. We kind of know what to expect out of Iowa State now. While they're an improving team under Matt Campbell, I think we've seen their ceiling. They dropped the game to Iowa, and then they dropped the game to Texas, and we kind of see what their limit is and where they're kind of get a feeling of where they're going to shake out. I would be surprised if they're able to hang with the Sooners in Norman or pull off too many surprises. Kind of the same with Kansas. We thought they might take a step forward, but it hasn't really worked out for them this season. They seem to be just who they are at this point. Texas Tech should get that win. They've played much better football so far. The biggest game, obviously, West Virginia at TCU, number 23 versus number 9 right now. The polls, those rankings will change, but it's still a very, very big game. The Mountaineers on the road. TCU, they control their own destiny. We'll see what happens. This is going to be a defining game for both squads, especially for West Virginia. They dropped a game to Virginia Tech, so can they be a contender like they thought they would be before the season? And then Kansas State and Texas, early pick. I kind of like the Longhorns in this game. Their defense is just phenomenal. They are playing. I really liked what we saw in the Iowa State game this week. On Thursday, bouncing back after the USC game, that was a big win for them. It was just a great game for that defense. And Kansas State, they've shown their issues. They lost the game to Vanderbilt, and then this week they got the win, but didn't look terribly great doing it. Had some issues, so I kind of like the Longhorns to maybe win this game.
Chris Ross, join him at the Land Grant Gauntlet. It's just the LGG.com for the best in Big 12 coverage.
LGG.com.
So, pardon me, Chris?
The LGG.com.
The LGG.com. You say it so much better than I do. And they can also catch your podcast right there on the website as well.
Yes, sir. And you can also catch the podcast at quickslantpodcast.com, and it has all the episodes there too.
Perfect. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel right here, where I bring on the best bloggers and broadcasters in the business, including guys like Chris Ross right here with the LGG. Chris, we appreciate you breaking down the Big 12 and Oklahoma State and Texas Tech.
Had a blast. It's a little depressing. Football's going way too quick. We're now entering week 6. This is not good.
It's the shortest season in major college or professional sports, but we got to grab all the excitement we can get, and these Saturday nights almost never disappoint. So we appreciate it, Chris.
Have a good one.